Hey, so I'm back where it all began. Today, I wanted to talk about trauma and its impact on me. I originally thought, have I really experienced trauma? I know that's a big reason a lot of people have alcohol related issues. And it wasn't until I talked to a recent therapist where she mentioned that rejection is a form of trauma, which was totally news to me, and in some ways glad to hear, because we all kind of make comparisons. Those of us in sobriety compare our situations to others, and they have it so much worse than we do. But everything's relative, and everyone's got their own story. So anyway, I have experienced. I was a late bloomer and barely dated through high school and college. And I guess you wouldn't call it rejection so much as not even trying, because I didn't have the confidence to even do so. So it was almost as much exclusion, which I did very early on in high school from the cool crowd. I say I had the A crowd personality, but only the B level confidence. So, as soon as people started having parties in high school, I'll never forget, I didn't get the invite. And I really got excluded from that crowd, including by one of the cool guys that I essentially grew up in my neighborhood, and we were hung out practically every day. But then as we got to high school, he started hanging with that crowd, and I fell off from it and more fell into the B crowd, which was great people, but I was kind of in between the two, and not only in high school, but in college. And I was always just essentially witnessing life. Never forget school dances. I can't believe I even went, but I would just stand on the sidelines watching all the good-looking people dancing with the girls. No one would ask me to dance, and it was more guys would ask them, and I wouldn't have the confidence to do that. And even going to the movies, I remember the cool guys all at dates or making out during the movies and stuff, and that wasn't me. I actually had a friend that once, fellow named Brian, which is my first name, and there was a girl named Angel that was open to dating either one of us, but I didn't have the confidence for that. So I remember the three of us went to the movies, but the two of them sat in front of me, and so I had the luxury of sitting by myself and then watching them make out midway through the movie. But I never would have done it. He had an older brother that I think showed him the ropes, and that wasn't the case with me. So again, I think witnessing life like that was really kind of traumatic. And then in college, same thing happened. I happened to be, paired with, as a roommate in freshman year, one of the, great personality guy that was absolutely friends with all the cool kids type. And, we had the lacrosse type of crowd on my floor, and I absolutely didn't fit in. Plus, ironically, I did not drink until 3 months into college. So I gravitated, again, more towards the B crowd. Luckily, I had a couple of those guys on my floor, and I had a guy that lived above me that I knew from a nearby high school that I competed in track with. But he was, hate the word, but almost more in the nerd crowd. So I was really between crowds in college, both, I guess you call it the A, B, and C crowd. So I didn't fit in anywhere, basically. If you can't fit in one of them, you don't fit in anywhere. So, and then when I started drinking, I went from party to party, basically. I basically went back and forth from the A crowd party to the B's, and just didn't fit in anywhere. And, I played on the flag football team with the kid I just mentioned that I knew from high school, played on with his friends, and then we compete against all the guys that lived on my floor, including my roommate and the guys I would sometimes hang out with, although, again, completely didn't fit in. I also remember even in the lunchroom in high school, didn't fit in anywhere, was every day was basically trauma about who I was even going to sit with. And to some extent in college as well. Luckily, I had my roommates if they were there. If not, who knew? Who knows? Because I was, really not the outgoing type at that point to even be sitting with people I didn't feel comfortable with. So I think they're all essentially little traumas. And that's where I'm bringing to the point that I learned from my therapist. There's such things. They call them little T's, little traumas. There's traumas that accumulate over time. Events that may seem minor, however, the constant stress and triggers of multiple little traumas ultimately overwhelm one's ability to emotionally regulate, and it results in anxiety, depression, etc. In addition, it takes a toll on one's sense of self, because little traumas can lead to tons of self-doubt, self-criticism, and feelings of being unable to manage minor stresses and triggers. And it says a combination leads to one being in a constant state of fight or flight, hence its damaging effects. After my therapist talked me through that, I then messaged her after, though. I said, but wait, still, how can that even compare with people that have been through major traumas, which I haven't, things like, I hate to say it, but, rape and things like that. She said, with big trauma, of course, it has similar effects, but there is a more defined beginning and end to the event. And one can essentially more easily rationalize their response to trauma. So the self-forgiveness and acceptance from one's self and their support community can lead to healing. Whereas with little traumas, they can overwhelm a person's coping mechanisms, causing mental health issues, despite, again, those events appearing minor at the time. And it occurred to me, it likely overwhelms their coping mechanisms because they don't seek support for them, because they might not even realize it was trauma, or again, because they're smaller ones. It's not something you immediately are going to have people coming to you to support you, or again, you seeking them. I think it's fascinating, and I'm so glad I learned through therapy that, these things I've experienced are a form of trauma. Another, memory similar to what I mentioned was when I was in high school. Might even been 8th grade. We were taking a bus to Washington, D.C., and this girl I love named Tanya was sitting next to this guy, Frank, and he was essentially kind of rubbing her boob over the clothes, and probably later saw them kissing, and that was traumatic for me because that was, a girl I adored and someone I thought I would never be able to, date in my life. And, I mentioned feeling left out at school dances, and to the point I couldn't handle this hearing the songs over the last 30 years, hearing the songs Faithfully by Journey and Wonderful Tonight by Eric Clapton. I'm just able to kind of now handle hearing those songs. I mean, I wouldn't have a, crazy response to them, but it definitely evoked, those memories. And what's great about, our little drinking problems is, as I've said to people, these meetings, we don't just talk about drinking all day. They're essentially group support that I never would have sought out had it not been for my, little drinking problems. So I'm so glad I did. I need to share about these kind of things even more, and I'm working on them, intensively now in therapy. So, it's one of the reasons we say we are the luckiest. We are forced to do the work that essentially everybody needs, but we have no choice but to step up and do it if we're going to beat this thing for life. So that'll do it for this one. I want to essentially do a part 2 that relates to something I learned that many with trauma have something called paralysis of initiation, which relates to a major procrastination issue that I've been trying to overcome. So stay tuned for that. And as always, please like, share, subscribe, and remember, stronger, sober. Thanks.